sanctuary, and one place with this one from the Rambam. That had a place in one place, and then they built one in a city called Shiloh, and that's where it lasted for a long time. Then they built it in another place, and finally, the base of Mikdash was built in Yerushalayim, and that was built by Shlomo Melech, by King Solomon. And even though they were built differently, the differences were minor differences. The general structure of all of them was the same, and the differences were all based on prophecy. It wasn't that they just decided, let's make it this way or that way. It was based on prophecy, and therefore they did what they did. And then came the second Beis Hamikdash after the first one was destroyed. So the mitzvah of building Beis Hamikdash still stands, and when Moshiach comes, being that now there's no longer any reason for it to be destroyed, we have a mitzvah to build the Beis Hamikdash. And we're going to learn about different details regarding the third Beis Hamikdash. But first of all, just to go through a few pages to see how this is part of our davening. So in the Shemona Esrei, one of the prayers are V'Yerushalayim Ircha. It's underlined. It's on page 1 in this section, section 19. Again, go to the book where it says 19, like this, and then turn the first page. So we say, return mercy, in mercy Jerusalem, your city, dwell therein as you have promised speedily, establish therein the throne of David, your servant, rebuild it soon in our days as an everlasting edifice. So basically, even though it says Yerushalayim, but what makes Yerushalayim totally reestablished is when the Beis Hamikdash is going to be built in Yerushalayim. And we learn in the Rambam, where is it going to be built? Exactly on the same spot where it was initially. There was a time where the Beis Hamikdash was in different places. Once they built the Beis Hamikdash in Yerushalayim on that mountain, they're not allowed to change a place forever. So the third Beis Hamikdash will also be in that place. Yes.
So the difference, you said, I just missed it, the difference between the Mishkan and the first Beis Hamikdash based on prophecies, or the difference between
all of them,
first,
all the different ones. First of all,
so the first and second Beis Hamikdash were different also, no?
There were also differences there, right?
It was also based on prophecies.
Also based on prophecies. And the difference between the general difference between the one in the desert and the one in Yerushalayim was the one in the desert was made out of wood, and it was covered with skin of animals, and basically it was not made out of stone. Everything was wood or skin of animals. The Beis Hamikdash is the reverse. There was no skin of animals, there was no wood, everything was stone, which also implied that it was a more permanent building. This is something which is permanent forever.
Who was the prophet who
in the times of Shlomo Melech himself was a prophet, but the one who designed it was basically King David and Shmuel HaNavi. Shmuel
had a prophecy.
They had prophecy. They based it on their prophecy. That's how they designed it. Yeah, basically Shmuel HaNavi and King David made the plans, the architectural plans, and Shlomo Melech was the one who actually built it. Anyone know the reason why King David didn't build it?
He had one on his hands for the war.
Right. So because King David fought many wars, even though they were all legitimate and they were all by Hashem's command, but still a war is a war, and unfortunately it causes blood loss and life loss. Hashem said he wanted the Beis Hamikdash to be built by such hands that there's no blood on their hands. And that was Shlomo HaMelech. King Solomon, the reason why it's called Shlomo is also because it comes from the word shalom. In his days, there was total peace. There were no wars. All the other countries lived at peace with each other, and they were all subservient to him. So therefore, he built the Beis Hamikdash. So first of all, we have this in the davening. Second of all, when the Shemona Esrei is over, look at the next page, page 2. After it's over, there's another prayer we say, may it be your will, Hashem, the God of our fathers, that the Beit HaMikdash be speedily rebuilt in our days, and grant us a portion in your Torah. Which means it's not enough that we said in the Shemona Esrei, we say it again after the Shemona Esrei is over. And by the way, those who daven 3 times a day means they say it in Shachris, in Mincha, and in Myra.
Which section is this? The second time it said in the davening?
It's right after.
After Osa Shalom, after we take the 3 steps back,
Ah, right.
then we have it again in benching. When we bench, we thank Hashem for the food. But together with that, we also mention and we ask for Eretz Yisrael to be rebuilt, and specifically the Beis Hamikdash. Look at the bottom of the next page, number 3. Hashem have mercy upon Israel, your people, Yerushalayim, your city, Tzion, the abode of your glory, which is the Beis Hamikdash, and the kingship of the house of King David, your anointed one, the great and holy house over which your name was proclaimed, which is the Beis Hamikdash. And at the bottom, again, we conclude with the bracha. Look where it's underlined. I'm looking at page 4 now. Rebuild Jerusalem, the holy city, speedily in our days. Blessed are you, Hashem, who has mercy. With his mercy, rebuilds Jerusalem. So basically, this is based on the fact that the Gemara says that the Jewish people, of course, need to ask Hashem for Mashiach in order for Hashem to send Mashiach. But it said they need to specifically spell out 3 specific requests. One is specifically ask the Beis Hamikdash to be rebuilt. One is specifically ask that Hashem's sovereignty be accepted in the whole world, that all the nations of the world accept Hashem as God. And the third thing is specifically ask that the descendant of King David should take upon himself the leadership of being Moshiach. Why is this? Because when the Jews were living in Israel, and even when they had the Beis Hamikdash, there came a king whose name was Yerovam ben Nevat, and the Jewish nation was split into 2 parts. The 2 parts were, there were 10 tribes that they accepted one king, and there were 2.5 tribes that accepted another king. The 2.5 tribes, they were under the sovereignty of King David's family. And the others came from a different tribe, the tribe of Joseph. But basically, the majority of Jews belonged to that other king. The other king was he was unfortunately not a Torah observant. He actually forced people to worship idols, otherwise they would get killed. And therefore, he also prohibited them to go to the Beis Hamikdash. So the Gemara, what?
Jewish?
He was a Jewish king. His name is Yerovam ben Nevat, and he was a descendant and from the tribe of Joseph. Not only that, he was not only was he Jewish, he was actually a very, very big, you can say a giant in Torah knowledge. But obviously, he went off track, which means when a giant in Torah knowledge goes off track, then there's giant mistakes and giant problems. So unfortunately, they rejected 3 things. By doing what he did, number 1, they rejected Hashem because they forced them to worship idols. Number 2, they rejected the Beis Hamikdash. He wouldn't allow them. There were roadblocks and there were guards on all the roads that no one is allowed to go to the Beis Hamikdash. And the third thing was that he obviously had a kingdom separate from King David. So he rejected the kingdom of King David. So it says, being that the Jews rejected these things, in order for Mashiach to come, we need to ask Hashem that we want to go back on all 3 things. Number 1, Hashem, we want you to be our king. We don't want to have anything to do with idol worship. Number 2, we want the Beis Hamikdash, and we want to go there. And number 3, we want a descendant of King David to be our king, which is Mashiach. So that's why in the davening, we have parts where we're asking for Mashiach. We have a part where we're asking for Hashem's kingdom to be in the world, and we have a part where we're asking for the Beis Hamikdash to be rebuilt. So now, to be more specific, let me read what it says in the Rambam about the Beis Hamikdash. That's on page 5. So this is Maimonides, and specifically about the Beis Hamikdash. It's the laws of the Beis Hamikdash. He starts off, it's a positive commandment to construct a house for Hashem, prepared for sacrifices to be offered, and we must celebrate there 3 times a year. Like it says, and you shall make me a sanctuary. This is this week's parsha. The sanctuary constructed by Moshe is already described in the Torah. It was only temporary. It says in Deuteronomy, at present you have not come to the resting place and inheritance, which means you didn't come to a permanent resting place. In fact, even in the desert, there wasn't a one place. The sanctuary traveled. It was a portable. You put it together and you took it apart and you rebuilt it. And he traveled from one place to the next. Altogether, it changed locations. Anyone know how many times altogether? How much? 42 is correct. Right. 42 journeys. These are called the 42 journeys in the desert. Right. Then it says, after the Jews entered Eretz Yisrael, there was someone called Eli. He was the high priest. He was like sort of the tzaddik of the generation. And when he died, it was destroyed. Destroyed by enemies of the Jews at that time who were called Plishtim. After that, they came to a place called Nov, and they built another sanctuary. When Shmuel died, that was destroyed. Then they came to another place called Geulah, they built another sanctuary. And then from there, they went to Yerushalayim, and Nov and Geulah was for 57 years. Basically, the count is that once they left Egypt, it was 480 years later when the Beis Hamikdash was built in Yerushalayim. Yeah.
Can you just repeat after people, where did it go and for how long? What was like the one?
Went to 2 places. One place was called Givon, and the other place was called Nov. And it doesn't say how much each one, but together it was 57 years.
Okay, together.
Yeah. Once the Beis Hamikdash was built in Yerushalayim, it became forbidden to build a sanctuary or to offer sacrifices in any other places. So it's interesting that, if you read the Chumash, it says Avraham Avinu built a altar and he brought a sacrifice. Yitzchak built an altar and he brought a sacrifice. In those days, there was no spot. If a person wanted to bring a sacrifice to Hashem, they can build an altar and bring a sacrifice wherever it was. And even in the times of the Beis Hamikdash, before they actually built the temple in Yerushalayim, there was still room to do such a thing, that someone could just build a sacrifice in his backyard, not a sacrifice, an altar, and bring a sacrifice. Once the Beis Hamikdash was built in Yerushalayim, this became the only place exclusively where you can bring a sacrifice to Hashem. Now, there's a story in Tanakh, which you might know, and if you don't know it yet, you'll know about it in 2 weeks, because it's going to be something connected to the Parsha. It's not in the Chumash, but it's a story in the Navi. That there was a time in history where there was a lot of false prophets. And there was a king, also from those 10 tribes. He was a evil king. They ordered a lot of the prophets were killed. And there were a few hundred prophets. They were all false, and they were promoting to worship idols. An idol called Baal. That was the name of the idol, and they were encouraging everyone to worship that idol. And apparently, most of the Jews were following them. At that time, Eliyahu Hanavi was a prophet, and there's a story that he got the people to do tshuva. How did he do that? He went to a mountain and he made up a deal with this king. He said, okay, you say your prophets are true, and I say that I'm a true prophet. Let's make a showdown. The showdown is let your prophets build an altar on the mountain. I'll build an altar on the mountain, and we'll both bring a sacrifice, but no fire. So your people will pray for fire, and I'll pray for fire. And whoever has the fire appearing on their altar, that shows that they're the true prophet. The king agreed. So they came that day, and they were on the mountain. All the Jews gathered to see what's going to happen. And they built an altar, and he built an altar. He told them to go first. They went first, and started praying and dancing and jumping up and down and screaming and shouting, and no fire appeared. And he told them, maybe your God is sleeping, maybe screaming a little bit louder. He was sort of making fun of them. What really happened was, what were they thinking? They knew that it's all false. So the Gemara says, what they were thinking was, their plan was, they had two people hiding underneath the altar. It was hollow inside. And when they would be praying, their plan was to light a fire from underneath, and people will think it's a fire from heaven. What Hashem did was, he sent a snake, poisoned snake, and the people who were hiding inside the altar, they both got bitten by the snake and they died. So therefore, nothing happened. Finally, they gave up. And we said, okay, now I'll do. He davened. The Gemara says he davened mincha. And he said, not only there's no fire, I'm going to put water on the altar. He davened to Hashem. And then a miracle happened, the fire appeared, and not only the water didn't interfere, but the fire consumed the water. And all the Yidden, when they saw that, they shouted 2 times, Hashem, who will the king? We see that God is the true God, and the idol, that's all false. It's a very major story in history. But the question is, how is he allowed to make a sacrifice there? It says after the Beis Hamikdash was already standing, you're not allowed to bring sacrifices in any other place except for the Beis Hamikdash. And the answer is, and we learned this when we were learning the laws of Rambam about a prophet, that if a prophet comes along and Hashem said temporarily, there's a certain situation that right now Hashem said it's permissible to do something, if he's a prophet that we know as an authentic prophet, we follow what he says. So therefore, this was like an accept. If he would say, from now on, you can bring a sacrifice wherever you want, that would be going against Torah. But if he said that there was a explicit prophecy from Hashem, that because of the circumstances, temporarily we can do something which we normally don't do, that's acceptable. And that's why he was able to do it. So, this is what the Rambam says. Once the Beis Hamikdash was built, there's no more other place, and there's no other place to bring any kind of sacrifice. Let's turn to page 7. So the one that was in the desert is in the Torah, described in the Torah. The one that Shlomo Melech built is also described in the book of Kings. In contrast to the design of the Messianic temple, which is in the book of Ezekiel. In other words, there is a prophecy to Yecheskel, who was a prophet, who was at the time in Babylon, in Geulah, where an angel came, took him to a mountain, and he showed him, and he gave him all the measurements, specific measurements of how the third Beis Hamikdash will appear. And it's a very complicated book to understand all the measurements. Today, there are a lot of people publish books, commentary to explain it. A lot of it's in English, so much more easier than it used to be. But this is the third thing. So we have the temple in the desert, we have the temple that Shlomo Melech built, and then we have the third temple. So the Rambam writes that the second temple, I'm looking now at number 4 in the Rambam, on page 7, that the second temple was built according to the structure of Shlomo Melech, and certain aspects are explicitly stated in Yecheskel. In other words, the second one was a little bit of a mixture. It was similar to the first, It was also had some similarity to the third that'll be built by Mashiach. So even though there are differences, but the differences are all in details, the general structure is as follows. The following elements are essential. One is the sanctuary. Two is the Holy of Holies. What is the sanctuary? That's the place where they had three articles: the menorah, the table, and the altar for the incense. And then came the Holy of Holies, which had only one article, and that was the ark, the aron, and the luchas, and the tablets. By the way, in the aron, did you have the tablets that were broken or the tablets that were complete?
Both.
Both. Both were there. The broken ones and the complete ones. And the reason is, which now is not the time to go into it, but obviously there was certain advantage in the first set of luchas where they were considered superior to the second. And in some aspects, the second one was superior to the first. So we have both. Then there's in front of the sanctuary, there was a place called the entrance hall. And all three together is called the Migdash. That's the temple. Then there must be another portion around the temple, resembling the curtains surrounding the courtyard of the desert. Everything encompassed by this portion is similar to the courtyard of the tent in the desert. And it's called, all together, it's called Beis HaMikdash. And then it goes on to the utensils and so on and so forth. So basically, this is one of the basic principles of Emunah, that when Mashiach comes, he's going to rebuild the third temple. In fact, we mentioned this numerous times, we are now already in the days of redemption unfolding. The miracles we witnessed, and we hope to be witnessing more miracles very soon. And these are all signs, but this is because we've already entered that era. But what will be the sort of the determining factor that will really turn the corner completely is when you see the third Beis HaMikdash standing. And it's not something we can do by force. It has to be a message from Hashem that the time has come to build the third Beis HaMikdash. But in the third Beis HaMikdash, I wanted to show you another thing about the Mizbeach. Look at chapter 2, which is page 8, specifically about the altar. The altar is to be placed in a very precise location, which may never be changed. This is the altar for the burnt offering of Israel. What is that location? Isaac, Yitzchak, was prepared to be sacrificed on the Temple Mountain. Like it says, go to the land of Moriah. And in the books of the prophets, it says that Shlomo HaMelech began to build the house of Hashem in Yerushalayim on the Mount Moriah, where Hashem appeared to David, his father, in the place that David had prepared in the threshing floor of Ornan the Jebusite. In other words, the spot where the Mizbeach is built is the same place where Abraham built an altar and to bring his son Yitzchak to the Akedah. He goes on more about that spot. Number 2, page 9. It is universally accepted that the place on which David and Solomon built the altar, which is the threshing floor of Ornan, that was a person that lived there and they had to buy this piece of land from him to build the Beis HaMikdash, is the location where Abraham built the altar on which he prepared Isaac for sacrifice. Noach built the altar on that location when he left the ark. It was also the altar on which Cain and Hevel brought their sacrifices. You know the story that Cain killed his brother, but where did they bring the sacrifice? In the exact same spot. Adam, the first man, offered a sacrifice there when he was created, the very same spot. And our sages say man was created from the place where he would find atonement, which means the earth that Hashem took to create Adam was taken from that spot where the Mizbeach is today. Where is the exact spot? I don't think we know where it is. How are we going to know the spot when Mashiach comes? So the Gemara says, because when Mashiach comes, Moshe Rabbeinu will be here again, and Aaron will be here, and there'll be prophets. In other words, there'll be those people who come back to life even before the masses, and they will show us where the spot is that we're supposed to build it. Okay. The next page is just a copy, just to see. This is where it's written in the book of Tanakh, in the book of Yecheskel. Again, Yecheskel was a Navi, a prophet, that he was taken in captivity by King Nebuchadnezzar after the destruction of the first temple, and he was in Babel. And where it's underlined, you can just see the beginning, not doing the whole thing, in the 25th year of our exile, which means it was already 25 years in the exile of Babylon. At the beginning of the year, on the 10th of the month, which is actually Yom Kippur, in the 14th year, the city was conquered. It was 25 years since he went to exile, but it was 14 years since Yerushalayim was conquered. On that very day, the hand of Hashem came upon me, and he brought me there. In a divine vision, he brought me to the land of Israel. He set me down on a very high mountain, near which there was something like the structure of a city to the south. He brought me there, and behold, there was a man whose appearance was like of copper, meaning he saw an angel with a linen cord and a measuring stick in his hand. He was standing by the gate. And the man said to me, Son of man, see with your eyes, hear with your ears, and set your heart to all that I'm going to show you. In order to show you that you have been brought here, and relate everything you see to the house of Israel. Go back to the Jews and tell them all the details. And what is it? The measurements of the doors and the walls and the floor and the rooms, all the measurements. So this is the basis for something which is relevant more in the summertime. There are 3 weeks that we mourn the destruction of the temple. And we know that the Rebbe points out that, it's not just about mourning the destruction, but to do everything we can to help rebuild it. So on this verse, the Medrash says that when the angel told Yecheskel, go back to the Jews and tell them, he said to him, why should I tell them? They're in exile. They can't build it anyway. If I'm going to tell them all this, I'll just aggravate them even more that they can't build the temple. So Hashem said to him, and because they're in exile, my house should be broken. Go tell them to study the laws of how to build a temple, and I will consider it as if they're building it. Which basically means that by learning and studying the laws of building the Beis Hamikdash, that hastens the actual building of the Beis Hamikdash. And that's why I've been encouraged that during the summer, those weeks, we should learn about the Beis Hamikdash. Now we're coming to a question, and that is, which comes first? One of the things that are going to happen with Moshiach is he'll build the Beis Hamikdash. The other is that all the Jews from around the world will come to Eretz Yisrael, which is called the ingathering of the exile. Which is first? Surprise, there are 2 opinions. Which will come first? Let's see. The ingathering of the exiles or the building of the Beis Hamikdash? Based on the verse, there's a pasuk says like this: Hashem builds Yerushalayim. He gathers together the outcasts of Israel. It's in Tehillim. We actually say this in davening every day. It's in the davening. The Zohar states, this implies, first the temple will be rebuilt, and then Hashem will raise the Jewish people from the dust, and they will all come to Israel. That's one source. There's another source, a medrash called Tanchuma. According to Tanchuma, Yerushalayim will not be rebuilt until all the exiles are gathered. So this explains the order in Shemona Esrei. In Shemona Esrei, there's one prayer that says, Hashem, sound the great shofar for our freedom, raise the banner to gather all the people from the exiles. And then it says, return to Yerushalayim, your city. It should be built soon nowadays, the eternal structure. So what comes first? First is the ingathering, and then is the building. We have 2 opinions. Yeah.
Well, not very controversial, I don't know, but like I had someone I know in Israel, religious Zionist, she and other people believe that, we were told it was gonna be one way, but actually it's really that we all have to come to Israel now. And then that is phase one of, is there commentary on that from Chabad?
Well, obviously, there are those people that are religious Zionists, and they believe that the more Jews will come to Israel, and when just by us coming without any sort of divine message, if enough people come to Israel, that'll bring Moshiach to be able to build base in English. Clearly, the Rebbe doesn't hold by that. In fact, one of the things which is criteria for Mashiach is that he will be the one to gather Jews from all over the world to come to Israel. So from that it appears, and that's a book of halacha, that the one who's going to do this, perform this in gathering of the exile will be Mashiach, not just laymen and people, men and women like us. Is it a good idea to live in Israel? Very good idea. In fact, the Rebbe was actually against mass exodus, which some rabbis wanted to make, that all the rabbis in the world should leave and go to Israel. So then all their communities will go, and Israel will have so much more people. The Rebbe was actually against it because he said by doing that, most Jews, the majority of the Jews live in America and other countries outside of Israel. And if all the religious Jews who observe Torah and all the rabbis, influential people leave, then this will cause massive assimilation for those who are left here. So we have a responsibility to be here. The Rebbe wasn't against people going there. The Rebbe himself sent couples to move to Israel and establish themselves in Yerushalayim, and some were established in Tzfat, and some who went to the city called Nachlas HaChabad. The Rebbe actually sent people from it was a very unusual thing. It was a Farbrengen. Yeah, you saw a picture of what a Farbrengen looks like. And the Farbrengen, the Rebbe asked the women also to come up by the Farbrengen. The Rebbe gave them a sefer, gave them this would be a bracha to go. But everyone looked upon this, and the Rebbe actually sent shluchim there to encourage people in Eretz Yisrael to be strong and to hold on to the land. But the idea of encouraging that everybody should go there, that would, many people ask the Rebbe, why doesn't he himself go? And the Rebbe, we know that he was dedicated totally for Eretz Yisrael, and we shouldn't give back one inch, and it's so precious, it's so dear to us. And the Rebbe never gave a 100% answer. But one of the things that the Rebbe once said, a person has to be where he's needed, not where he wants to be. It was understood that the Rebbe felt that if he would leave and go to Israel, then others would follow, then that would bring the Jews who live in the diaspora, chas v'shalom, to become more and more alienated. Okay, so which is it? One way or the other? Yes?
Question. I'm just curious, really, being open with you. Why, your whole Zion and everything, sometimes, in a lot of Chabad communities, not communities, just the Israel flag is not a big deal, but the Moshiach flag is a bigger, it's more prominent. So we all love Israel, right? But why is it that part is missing, and why is it sometimes an issue to kind of talk about?
It's a longer discussion.
Right.
We usually have a class on this. It's usually at the Pesach. I can just briefly say it. I don't want to, sometimes a little information is worse than no information. Because then when you say a little information, it appears as if this is the answer. There's more to it. But generally speaking, there is no question in anyone's mind. In fact, the Rebbe was probably the strongest, biggest, most powerful advocate for Israel, not to give it back 1 inch of land. The Rebbe earned himself a lot of enemies because of that, in the government and others, because mostly 90% of the voices for many years was just give the Arabs what they're asking for, give. And the Rebbe fought it. The Rebbe would spend at every Farbrengen either an hour, sometimes an hour and a half, just talking about not giving back 1 inch, not 1 iota of land. So there's no doubt in anyone's mind that Israel is precious and Israel is holy, and the Rebbe loves the land of Israel. I still remember where there was a question about giving back the Golan Heights. Anyone knows anything about Israel? Golan Heights is a strategic place because the Jews are on top instead of our enemy being on top. And strategically, that's much better for us. But there was a certain rabbi who was constantly fighting the Rebbe, and his opinion was give back, give back, give back. When it came to the Golan Heights, so he expressed himself and said, listen, Jews lived for 1900 years without the Golan Heights. They can live another 1900 years without the Golan Heights. And the Rebbe, was very, very strong at that time. And said, basically what you're saying is, we lived for so many years without having the whole land of Israel. We can live another 1900 years without the whole land of Israel. No, every inch of the land is precious, is holy, is ours. And we're not compromising, we're not surrendering 1 inch of land. So there's no question about the Rebbe's love for Israel. And the flag is something else because Israel went through huge changes. The initial Zionists who established Zionism had a different idea than what you know today.
Yeah, I understand.
If you know a little bit of the history, the person who started Zionism was someone named Herzl. Now, Herzl was not a religious Jew. Not only not a religious Jew, he was anti-religion. Not only anti-religion, he wanted to establish a country in a different place altogether.
No, very sad.
Uganda. And not only that, you can look all this up. I found it all online. It's not my, look it online, you'll see. He had a solution for anti-Semitism. His solution was, he was in Austria, to make a mass conversion that all Jews convert to Christianity, there won't be any more anti-Semitism. Such a brilliant solution. So that's where he was standing, and that's the Zionism that he was representing. So because Zionism and the flag represents that initial ideology, therefore we don't acknowledge that. But yes, it's true that today Israel and people who consider themselves Zionists is the opposite. That's what brings them closer to Yiddishkeit. And so many thousands of young people found their way to Yiddishkeit through Israel, through Zionism. So it's a little bit of a mix-up, but that's the reason why it became that way. And that's, but it's just the symbolism, but nothing else, nothing more than that. Yeah.
Might be too long of a topic, or maybe not. So Moshiach would lead the ingathering.
Right.
Do you have any idea what that would look like?
What it would look like. I can't reveal everything. Rabbi Dubov, maybe I'm going to finish. You might as well teach us that is going upstairs.
Okay.
Okay. Huh? No, it's just. Years ago, it looked like, okay, some miracles are going to happen, clouds are going to come, and the second we're going to be in Israel. It'll be that way. But today, we can even picture this in a much more natural way. That every single airline in the world is going to donate their services, that Jews can go to Israel. Within 24 hours, all the Jews in the whole entire world will be there, transported in a second.
I don't have to go on an airplane, no problem on the cloud.
Yeah, you're going to travel.
First plan.
Yeah, but then Mashiach.
Some people have anxiety with the clouds because, they might fall through.
The Mashiach would like somehow, communicate this.
Obviously, there'll be a person who's Moshiach, and he'll say the time has come that everybody should go to Israel and will be transported. Years ago, how could they imagine everybody going to these with a horse and a wagon? How are you going to get there? But it does say there'll be a miracle with the clouds, which exactly what that means, we don't know. But it might mean that clouds will come down, and next time you open your eyes, you're going to see that you're in Israel, It's like when I just had the surgery, the doctor is talking to me and says, we're doing now the needle. This is going to be for the anesthesia. The next sentence that I heard was, wake up, wake up, wake up. Doing something like that, the Moshiach will come and say, we're going to Israel. And the next thing you know, we're there.
Something about eagles though? I've always heard eagles.
In some places it says we carried on. But a lot of these things are metaphors. We don't know if it's literally or it's a metaphor.
I guess, with like you were saying with the internet, the whole world can find out.
Right, with the internet today, the circumstances today, we always had this belief. But years ago, it was in a more of a miraculous way. It wasn't the same kind of reality. Now we can really envision everything. Moshiach coming in an instant, the whole world will know about it. And in an instant, we can all be transformed, transferred to Eretz Yisrael in no time.
And then to big count of everybody believing it.
When that time comes, that'll be part of the miracle that we will believe, right? We'll believe, and the nations in the world will be warm and accepting and welcoming, and that's what's going to happen. That's part of the miracle. Okay, to be continued. Good Shabbos, everybody. How are you?